Hi, the next section we want to talk about is another section I'm calling usage, because I think that's the title that the book gave. And last time we delved into the area of spelling with homophones and homographs, and this time we're dealing with an area that could be considered more literature with, with similes and things like that. I'm going to start out with connotations and denotations. When someone asks what a word means, that word can be defined in the dictionary. It has an exact meaning derived from the Latin root or the Greek or Anglo or Germanic root, literal meaning, okay? And that is called the denotation of the word. The connotation of a word is also a meaning, but it's a meaning that conveys more of a general feel of a word, an added meaning that gives that feel or sense of something, and often it's a positive or negative connotation. You can use synonyms and look up synonyms, but it's important to know when you are giving a certain kind of connotation. For example, going across here, you have some synonyms. And I put them on a negative to positive continuum, and those things can vary according to where you live or who you associate with or even time periods. But this is a basic idea. The word thin referring to a person, and all of these are going to be referring to persons, but they're not the only kinds of words that have connotations, of course. The word thin is sort of negative, not negative, but neutral. Like, he's a thin guy, okay? That doesn't mean that we admire his thinness or we think that he's unhealthy or anything. It's just neutral. Skinny is slightly negative. He's skinny. You know, although now we use the word skinny jeans for something that's not necessarily negative, but when referring to a person, it's just slightly negative. Scrawny is pretty negative, and it makes it sound like the person is not healthy. Or maybe I can talk about animals that way, like, oh, that kitten is a scrawny little thing. That means that, wow, that kitten needs to gain some weight or he's going to have health problems, kind of thing. And same thing with people. And then positive, on the positive side, I want to be more slim, okay? So that's a positive way of talking about thinness. Slender is also positive. It's debatable which one is more positive. Neutral, okay? So she's an unusual girl. That would be a neutral way of saying something. It would be like a softer way of saying that she's weird. And so strange and weird are usually more negative when we refer to people. They have a negative connotation. They may have the same dictionary definition and could be called synonyms, but they would have a more negative connotation. And then on the positive side, eccentric and extraordinary. Extraordinary obviously is the most positive one. Somebody is unusual in a really positive way. She's an extraordinary singer, meaning that her singing is so unusual in a really good way. Eccentric, sometimes people use that in a negative way too. So it can migrate around. But eccentric usually refers to someone who, a lot of times it refers to someone who is older or more wealthy or both, who is unusual in a way that makes them stand out a lot from other people. So the eccentric woman has 40 cats, you know. So that would be a little eccentric. And then we have neutral, strong. She has a strong personality. That could be taken a little slight bit negative when you're talking especially about women. I know that's a little chauvinistic, but that's life. And then aggressive would usually be considered more negative and also maybe a little bit more physical. Domineering is usually a negative connotation. When somebody tends to boss other people around, whether or not they're in a position of authority, that person could be called domineering. Or that when the person takes advantage of his or her own position of authority and bosses people around more than necessary, kind of thing. Bossy is another word that can usually be considered negative. Assertive is a positive way of being strong. You need to learn how to be more assertive. You might have heard that before. And that means to take your, make sure that your opinion is heard. Make sure your voice is heard. Make sure other people know what you think, kind of thing. Assertive. Authoritative is kind of like domineering, but positive. Domineering is a negative, bossy, yucky thing. Authoritative is like, Bessie walked into the room and began to address the crowd in an authoritative way. That means that she's able to be strong and in charge, and as she should be if she is addressing the entire room. Okay? So figures of speech take all these kinds of things into consideration. Figures of speech are words or phrases used in a non-literal way for effect. Okay? A simile, the definition is very well known, and you've probably heard it several times over the years, using like or as to compare two nouns or concepts. There may be other words that you can use to compare them and still be a simile, but it's a very direct way of saying something is like something else. Happy coffee time. And for example, he ran like the wind. So I'm comparing his running to the wind, really quick, right? And her eyes were as blue as the sky. So I'm comparing the color of her eyes to the color of the sky. If you want to be more exact, her eyes were as blue as the summer sky. Okay? Then metaphors. Metaphors are kind of like synonyms in that you're comparing two things that aren't necessarily alike, like somebody's running to the wind or somebody's eyes to the sky, okay? But it's not as direct. And so here's a definition. There will be a slightly different definition in your book, but hopefully you'll get the idea. Referring to an object, idea, or situation as if it were something it's not, in order to convey a feeling or idea. For example, this is from a song by Michael Bublé. Why do you not cry me a river? So obviously, we can't produce literal rivers out of our eyes, but it's comparing someone's tears, the volume maybe of somebody's tears and the amount that they cry to a river. It's an exaggeration, and it's a metaphor. And then you are what a moon means, and what a sun sings is you. That's from a poem by E.E. Cummings. And remember, I think I mentioned to you that he is one of only two people I know of that it's accepted to not capitalize the name of the person. E.E. Cummings, and then there's a singer called K.D. Lang, and she does not capitalize her name. But other than that, we do. Anyway, but we're talking about metaphors. And here it says, you are what a moon means. Okay? So that's a metaphor. We're talking about a person, comparing it to the moon, and also saying that a moon can have meaning in its shining, or reflection of the sunlight or whatever. And what a sun sings. So now we're actually going into the area of personification, giving characteristics of a person to a thing. what a sun sings is you. So we're comparing a person to a sun and a moon. We're comparing the shining of a moon to meaning. We're comparing to the shining of the sun to singing. Okay, so there's a lot of metaphor going on in this line by E.E. Cummings. And then personification, giving animals or things or ideas human traits. So like I said before, what a sun sings. Suns don't sing, okay? But we're kind of giving a feel in, that we want the person, our reader, to get. Or the sun reached out its fingers to me. Suns don't have fingers, and they don't technically reach out. Okay, they're burning rocks in space. Okay, but this would be a personification of sun, and you can kind of get a feel of what that means. The sun reached out its fingers to me. Maybe it's talking about the sun's rays. Maybe the sun's rays are coming through some clouds, and so it's not just light, but it's kind of like this, you know. So you kind of get a feeling. And then the woods are preparing to go to sleep, and that's from a book by L.G. Montgomery. And so the woods meaning a forest, and the woods don't actually sleep like people sleep, okay? But we're giving personification here to convey a feel of what it's like in the woods at a particular time of the day. And then opportunity is knocking at your door. Opportunity is not a person, and it doesn't come up to your door and knock. But if we say opportunity is knocking at your door, that means that it's very near, and it's almost like it's waiting for you to take advantage of it. Again, waiting would be personification as well. So if I say to you, opportunity is knocking at your door, what does that mean to you? Think about that. So in your book pages that we'll go over, and of course in the sentences that I will assign you to write, we will be going through connotations, whether positive connotations or negative connotations, similes, metaphors, and personification. So get ready for that, and have a nice day.